going to be exciting. So this one is about more about my miscarriage, what happened, what me and Nick went through together as a couple, and me on my own, and all sorts. It's going to be really, like, you know, it really is going to be about what happened. There's going to be gory bits, so if it's something that you don't really want to know about, if you're like a close family friend and you're just a bit, you know, it's going to make you upset, then that's fine, you can click off, I totally understand. Or if it's just something you don't want to watch, then that's cool, just click off. So yeah, here we go. So me and Nick got married in July 2017, and we always knew that we wanted a big family. We have 2 boys already. So I had my first when I was really young, with a previous partner, and he's now 10, so he's all grown pretty much. And then we had our second, well, my second, Nick's first son, when, oh, how old was Luca? He was 5. So when Luca was 5, we decided to have another one. I didn't want to get too big, and because I'd already had one quite young, I was already a young mum, so we had our second one. I was 21 and Nick was 22, and then got married, and then decided that we wanted more kids. So I came off my pill in October. I was just on like a mini pill. It's called the mini pill. I think it's called, I think it was Micronor, I think the one was that I was on. And it worked really well for me, to be fair. It stopped me getting pregnant for like 4 years, and it was fine. So I was on that, and then I came off in October. I thought, you know, as it says sort of online, and also like your doctor might say if you're trying for a baby to come off your pill for a little bit before, so that you get an idea of your cycles, and then that way, you know, if you fall pregnant, you'll know when the due date might be, because if you do it straight away, it's like, honestly, the world of trying to conceive is ridiculous, but it can, you know, it's just easier to know, and also it helps your body get back into the sync of having like like a cycle again, like having proper periods, because I think a lot of women who are on the pill who don't, by the way, this is the pill that's like you take it constantly, there's no break. It's not like you take, I think it was like, what is it, 21 days and then you have a break on the normal pill, like a 5 or 6 day break, and then on the mini pill you just take it all the time, all the way through, every day of the year, 1 pill a day, with no break, and then you have a period. But what me and Nick have recently found out is that that's not actually a period. It's called like a breakthrough bleeding, which is like, it's like your body having a false period. They're not actually periods. So the whole time that I was on that pill, which was like 4 years, I didn't ovulate, because that's what the pill does. It stops you from ovulating, amongst other things. So yeah, I was having that. Anyway, I came off the pill. I think we waited like a month or so, 2 months, and then after that I was like, okay, like let's like see what happens. And it was very casual. It wasn't like, this is when I'm ovulating, this is when we should try for a baby now. It was more like, you know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it might take a bit longer, whatever. At this point, I had no idea about my PCOS, despite the fact that throughout my whole life, looking back, I've always had problems with sort of that area. Like, I've always had really painful periods, or they've been really heavy and really uncomfortable, and just, like, I remember being at school, and, you know, when you have your first few when you're at school, I would get them, and my teacher would have to carry me out of a classroom once because I passed out so badly and lost quite a lot of blood. So it's not been great. So yeah, so we tried obviously then, and we managed to fall pregnant in December. And as my friends will tell you, I was probably driving them a bit mad by this point, because was it October, November, December, it's like 3 months, and I was already going out of my head like, why am I not pregnant yet? Why am I not pregnant? And I remember going out for a meal with my friends, actually, and we had like a girly Christmas meal, and I was sitting with the girls, and I was just like, oh, it's just not, why is it not happening? Like, I should be pregnant now. And I was getting really frustrated, but I think it's just because I wanted it so much, and so did Nick. And that whole time I was actually pregnant. I was just really, really early and didn't know. So as you can imagine, it was Christmas. I had, you know, some alcohol and things like that. And by the point that I had alcohol, I'd ruled out that I was pregnant, because I'd taken pregnancy tests and they were all negative, and I was late on my period as well. So this is probably where the PCOS came into play a little bit, because when I was due on, I took a test, it was negative, so I was like, okay, I can have a drink. So I would go to like my work Christmas party, I'd go out with friends and I'd have a drink, thinking that I'm not pregnant, when actually I was. It was just that because of my cycles are so different, I'd ovulated a bit later in that month, so it hadn't come up positive yet. So I took a test eventually, because we went away for a nice, lovely family holiday, me and my husband, and basically all my husband's side of his family. We all got treated to a nice holiday in Lapland, which was lovely, with all the kids. And that was fun. Obviously there was, I don't think I actually did have any alcohol while we were there, but there was obviously a lot of like rolling around in the snow and like going down like snow things, whatever they're called, sledge things, and playing with the kids. So, and obviously when you're pregnant, that's probably not a good idea to like do. But I didn't know then, so I just went about life as usual, thinking this whole time that I was in Lapland, I remember thinking, like, I'm due on any minute, like, it just needs to hurry up. And by that point I was just a bit frustrated, really. I remember saying to Nick, like, I know I'm not pregnant because the tests are negative, but why have I not come on yet? Like, I know I'm due on and it just needs to happen. I was getting quite frustrated, and I'm sure as all you lovely women know out there, that when you're late and you feel like you're coming on and you're bloated and you can't fit in your nice jeans and you just want to eat crap food, it just makes you feel a bit crap. I was in that place, but I didn't come on, and we came back from Lapland, I think that was like the 19th or something of December, and then obviously the weeks went by, still negatives. I was still getting negatives. I was probably testing nearly every week. I was testing just to be sure. And they were always negative, so I was like, right, I'm definitely just late then. I'm just having a dodgy month. Maybe it's because I've come off my pill. I remember thinking that as well, that maybe it's where I come off my pill, it's just taking its time to come back into play again. But never did. And then we had Christmas with my mum and my brother, and that was lovely. And obviously I had I think I only had like a glass, I had like a glass of like red wine or something, like half a glass. And then I still took a test Christmas Eve, because I had this thing, like, because my husband's birthday's on Christmas Day, so I always thought it'd be lovely to tell him on Christmas if I was, but obviously I wasn't, and I thought I wasn't, it was negative, so I was like, okay, fine. Weeks went by, had New Year at my mum's house, with my brother again, and I had a little bit of alcohol there, still getting negatives to this point, so you're talking like 3 or 4 weeks, like a month basically, I was getting negatives after like I was due on. So it wasn't until my second period would have been due that I got my positive. So I was 6 or 7 weeks when I got my positive. I think I was 7 weeks. And I came back from New Year's Day. So we spent New Year's Eve at my mum's, celebrated New Year's, like obviously 12 o'clock while I had a drink. New Year's Day, spent the day, and then came back to our flat at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just said to Nick, right, I'm just going to do one more, just to know, and then that's it. We'll know for sure. And it's really hard to like think back to it, because it's like August now, and this happened in January, so I'm trying to think back. But I remember that my boobs felt like pregnant boobs, like they were like really sore, and like changing my bra was hurting, like beginning to hurt, and I was like, okay, maybe I am then. So I took the test, and I think I waited for it to be positive before I called Nick in. Yeah, I waited to see the result. It was one of the, I don't know if I've got some actually, it was one of these. I'll just get some out of my underwear drawer. Here we go. It was one of these tests. You can just get them off eBay, and it's just like one of those one-step tests. So they're like the really cheap ones off eBay you can buy, but they work. So it was just one of those little tests. It wasn't like a clear blue one or anything. And that came up positive. And I remember being in the bathroom and I was just like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And I was so happy. And Nick was in here in our bedroom, and I came running down the hallway. And I was like, sort of shaky, I think. I think I was just nervous. You know, whenever you take a pregnancy test, I don't know why, it always makes me really nervous. And I was like, yeah, Nick, it's positive. And he was like, what? Because this whole time we just thought, no, my period's just being a little shit and being late, and it's not. He'd seen me get so excited then it being negative so many times by this point, but then it got a positive, so it changed things, and I was really happy. And I started crying. I was so happy. I said, go get a clear blue one, quick, because I wanted to know how many weeks I was because of all this kerfuffle. I wanted to know exactly how far along I was. So I was like, go get a clear blue, just to be sure. And I also questioned them a little bit, because although I say they're good and they're from eBay, I don't know, I just wanted a clear blue one. So he went and got one of them, which was like the ones that says how many weeks. I can't remember what weeks it said now, but it was like pregnant, and came up like straight away, and I was like, oh my god, I definitely am. If the clear blue one says I am, I definitely am. So excited. I was, you know, I started thinking about when would it be due then. So my due date would have been August this year, would have been the 28th, so it's Thursday today. It would have been on the Tuesday just gone. And so I was like, August, perfect. I was like, my kids' birthdays are April, May, June, July, August. It's nice, like it'll be different to have a summer baby. Both my babies are spring babies. And it was nice to think of like my pregnancy being in a different time of year, because I'm always pregnant on Christmas, New Year, because both of my kids have been, both their birthdays are quite close, like April and May. I always have sort of the same time of the year that I'm pregnant, so this would have been completely different. I would have been pregnant through summer, which I've never been. So I was really excited about being pregnant, and I kept thinking like, oh, it'd be so lovely, like think how pregnant I'll be on our first year anniversary, which is July just gone. I was like, I'll be really pregnant by then, we'll get really good photos done. I was like, we're going to get some photos with the kids and have like a nice sort of like a baby shower thing. And I was thinking about telling my friends, and I think the first person I told was my mum, and then we told Nick's mum, and a few of my close friends as well I told. I think just because I was so excited, and everyone's always like, oh, you shouldn't really tell anyone until you hit 12 weeks, and I get that, but it's just hard, because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. That's out of your hands. It's so, like, as anyone will know, like I've had 4 miscarriages, it might happen, it might, and as you'll see, I'm going to put a video before this one when I post up, and it'll be the video of me talking about me being pregnant that I made, because when I found out I was pregnant, I was going to do a little, like a group of, you know, videos with the pregnancy, and follow it with that, so that's what that's from. But yeah, I mean, we decided just to tell mums. I told my dad as well, and my brother. Yeah, just close friends, close family, about it. And we were really excited. And then the day after that, I was straight on the phone to my doctor's surgery to find out what my next step was, to get the pregnancy notes and blah, blah, blah. Booking the 8-week, I think it's between 8 and 12 weeks you have your first midwife appointment, and mine was booked for my 8-week or 9-week. I can't remember now. I'm not long after I actually had the miscarriage, so I think it was probably just after 9 weeks then. And then the weeks, when you think about it, really, I was only pregnant for 2 weeks that I knew of. So we found out on the 1st of January, and everything was fine, really. I noticed that my symptoms weren't that strong, and I felt a bit worried about that, because with my 2 sons, they were both, I was so sick in the beginning, especially with my first. I was so sick, and my boobs were really painful, and I noticed with the pregnancy that they weren't as, it wasn't as bad. But then whenever I got worried, I kept talking to my husband, and he was like, you're just worrying, you're just looking for it, stop worrying. And because I'd had 3 miscarriages, it's painful to say, but to be perfectly honest, it's like the minute I saw that positive in the bathroom, the thoughts that went through my head, the first thought was, oh my god, I'm actually pregnant. And the second one was, something's not right. This isn't going to last. And I had to push that doubt feeling right to the back of my head, because I wanted to enjoy being pregnant, no matter how long it was for. And I remember even going to like work, and where I worked at the time, and I have really close friends there who I still speak to now. And I remember going in and saying, you know, I told one of my close friends, and she was at work at the time, and I said to her, I don't know why, but I'm so worried I'm going to have miscarriage. She was like, you won't. Stop worrying. You'll be fine. You need to stay positive. And I get that. Like, she was trying to keep me positive, keep me happy, and keep me healthy mind, right? So I get that. But it wasn't really the case for this one. So what happened then was I finally started to relax. I thought, you know what? I'm stuck in my own head. If I keep worrying, it's going to happen. It will happen. So I need to stop. I need to take a second to just embrace the fact that I'm pregnant, be happy about it, look forward to the future. So I was like, fine. So I started looking at, you know, boys and girls' baby names, blah, blah, blah. And obviously my boy names I've got saved because I've had 2 boys already. So I've got my 3rd name ready. And I started thinking, okay, but what if it's a girl? What would I call the baby if it was a girl? So I was like, okay, I'll start looking. And there was a lunar eclipse coming up, with, you know, and that came up on my Facebook about this lunar eclipse happening. And I was like, oh wow, I've always liked the name Luna. And I was like, oh, if it's a girl, I'll call it Luna. I like that name. And I've always sort of been a bit fascinated, this sounds so lame, but I've always been a bit fascinated with like space. I just think it's weird, like sometimes if you stare out there long enough, you realise just how small and insignificant you are to the world. I think that's quite a scary but amazing thing. So I like the name Luna. It also means moon, and my star sign is Cancer, and the moon's my thing, so I like that idea. Yeah, so I was like, Luna's nice. I'll keep Luna. And then I started being really happy. And then I think it might have been a weekday that I started bleeding, I'm not sure. I think it was the evening I'd started spotting really light brown. It was so light. It was like, you know when you get a paper cut and you bleed the smallest, it was like that, but it was almost really light brown colour. And I started thinking, okay, it's light brown, that's good, because, well, no bleeding's good, but if it's light brown, that means it's old blood. So it could be, because I had this with my youngest, I had the same thing, I had some spotting with him, and we had a bit of a scare with him actually. We had a threatened miscarriage with my now 4-year-old, which is like a little bleed, and then they check up on you, mate, and they give you a scan to make sure everything's okay. And luckily with Kian everything was fine, and he was there at 7 weeks with his heartbeat going away. But with Luna, I started bleeding these brown spots. I was worried, yeah, because of the doubt that was there for weeks anyway. And this was on day, oh God, I'm trying to think now. I should have got my dates ready. I think this was on like the 14th of January, so literally 2 weeks that I knew I was pregnant. Started the spotting, and then I called, I think it was quite late, so I called, no, I didn't. I waited till the morning. I called the surgery, the doctor's surgery, and I said, I've had some light spotting. They said, okay, come in, we're gonna talk to you. So I came in, had a chat with my doctor, explained what happened. He said, okay, it might not be anything to worry about, go home. If it gets any worse, call 111 if it's you know, if the doctors are shut, or just call us straight away, or if it's so bad you're concerned, just go straight to A&E and get that seen to as soon as possible. I was like, okay, cool, fine. So I kept monitoring it like crazy, and Nick was amazing. Like, he kept making sure I was okay, kept asking if I was okay. Like, going to the toilet became like the biggest fear of my life. Like, if I needed a wee, I'd just be like, no, I'll just hold it in, I won't wee yet, because I kept going for a wee, wiping myself, and there was more and more and more bleeding, and I ignored it. Like, I ignored it when it got a bit worse. I just kept thinking it's probably just that. It wasn't too bad. It was bleeding, but it was very light, so it went from brown spotting to light bleeding, kind of like what you get just before you're about to start your period. And then that was it. Like, I went for a wee that evening, so that was the 15th. I went for a wee in the evening, and I kept going in the bathroom anyway, even if I didn't need a wee, just to check, because I was just so crazy. And it was just full heavy bleeding. Like, I've had yes, I've had 3 other miscarriages, but I don't know why this one has stuck in my brain so much more vividly than the other ones did. I think the other ones, this was the latest miscarriage I'd had. The other ones that I'd had, the other 3, were really early. They were like between 4 and 5 weeks of pregnancy. So you're talking like, you know, sperm meets egg, doesn't attach, bleeding. That's what you're talking. I think the one before Luna, I was probably about 6 weeks. So that was, I guess, kind of far along. But I just can't remember that one for some reason. I really can't. But this one, anyway, the bleeding was really, really heavy. And the first thing I thought was like, how am I going to tell Nick? Like, I was in the bathroom, I was just like, how am I going to tell him? Because Nick is a very optimistic person. Like, he's way more positive than me. Anyone who knows me knows it's Nat. She's going to jump straight to the negative, and I'm a worry head anyway. But Nick is so positive, like, he keeps me so grounded. And if I ever worry about something, he's like, no, because this, and he'll just cheer me up. But this was like the other way around. It was like, how am I supposed to tell this lovely man who's so happy and confident that everything's going to be okay that, no, it's definitely that. Because I knew when that bleeding happened, it was like blood clots. There's no way that it wasn't. And I just had to be honest with him. So he came into the bathroom. He didn't see anything. It was all clean. Like, I didn't leave any sort of tissue around or anything. And he was like, I think he just knew from the look on my face. I was like, yeah, babe, it's a miscarriage. And he was just like, right. He didn't cry straight away, but he was a bit, you can see like he was just gutted. It was like someone had just told him like the world's going to end. And I was obviously really upset too. We went to bed that night and I just did not sleep, as you can imagine. Like, I just lied there thinking like, what happens now? What happens now? I should probably mention that when I went to the doctors and they said about my spotting, my first initial spotting, he said, go away, if it gets worse, we'll see you by then. But he'd actually booked me a scan as well. He'd booked me a scan at the early pregnancy unit where I live. He booked that for the 15th of January. So hang on, 14th started bleeding, 15th got worse. I think it was the 17th, actually. It was the 17th the scan was booked for. So there's a few days, and in those few days it got so bad, and the 17th came, so we decided to go to sleep. The 17th came, and it was, I didn't really know what to do. I remember saying to Nick, like, do I still go to the scan even though I know that I'm having a miscarriage, or do I just stay at home and deal with things? So I called them and they were like, still come in, because if it's a miscarriage, if that's what you think's happening, we want to do a scan to make sure that everything's okay. Sometimes with miscarriages, women can have things left in them, so they can have parts of the baby, they can have like the placenta, something like that, and sometimes people can lose their babies and not have any bleeding at all. It's like a miscarriage. So they do scans to just see what's going on. So anyway, I had my scan book, so I went in, I had my scan, and I remember waiting in the waiting room, and the bleeding had slowed down a little bit, like there was a bit of a gap. And I remember thinking, like, maybe, I don't know what it is, I think you just get this tiny ray of hope, and you just think, maybe it's not a miscarriage, maybe I got the bleeding completely wrong, and it was just something else. And you hear so many different stories. Like, the internet is so amazing, but it can also be the worst place. Like, you guys know what I'm on about. The minute you get a cold or something, you're like, oh, am I going to die? But, well, if you're anything like me. But, you know, the bleeding happened, and I was Googling, you know, heavy bleeding, but could the baby still be there? And there were some women that had sort of like little bumps of blood in their womb. That was the bleed, but the baby was fine. And that makes you think, oh, it could be that, it could be this, it could be this. Let's not go to the worst thing in the world. But deep down I knew. But you try and hold on, don't you, really? And yeah, so I had the scan, and I had this amazing consultant. He was absolutely amazing. Like, the NHS staff were like It was at Stoke Mandeville Hospital I had this done, and they were just so good, like really, really good. And considering that the early pregnancy unit is literally where you see full pregnant women walking around, so you get asked to sit in a quieter waiting area. So there's like the main waiting area, which is like all of the pregnant women that are heavily pregnant that are having, you know, their dating scans and scans just to see how the baby's doing and other things. And then there's like this tiny waiting room where you have to sit. And I remember sitting there with Nick, and there was this person next to me, and bless her, she's, you know, obviously just excited about her pregnancy, and that's fine, but she was, you know, oh, blah, 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 like really, really happy, and all her friends and family were like really happy, but they were really close by us. And me and Nick must have looked like the saddest people in the world, just sitting in this little box. I think the kids were at school. Oh no, they weren't, they were with my mum. My mum had my kids while I went and had this done. So I had the scan, we got led into this room, and it's a vaginal scan, so it's not the most comfortable scan, because when you're pregnant, before you're heavily pregnant, before like 9, or I think it's between 9 and 12 weeks, they can see the fetus by doing the one on the belly. But before that, you normally have to have a vaginal one. So it's like a little probe, and it has a little tiny camera on the top. It's not painful in any way. It's just a bit uncomfortable. It just makes you a bit like, ugh. But it's not painful. It's fine. So they've done that, and I've had plenty, but the amount of kids I've had, it's fine. So went ahead with that, and the male consultant was there, and I had a female nurse, and I had Nick next to me. And I remember feeling quite embarrassed because I was bleeding so much, and I remember thinking, God, like this, I don't want to make like a mess on the bed that I'm lying on, and I just became really self-conscious, and I didn't want Nick to see it. My main priority was Nick not seeing how gory a miscarriage can be, because he will just do nothing but feel guilty that I went through it, and there was nothing that he could have done. So I tried so hard to make sure that he didn't see any of it, and, you know, make sure the sheet was over me and that it was covered. So I was lying there. He'd done some, you know, moving around just to see, and within about 2 minutes, if that, of the scan starting, he was like, yeah, you know, your womb appears clear, the words he used. And I was like, okay, so there's no sort of fetus there, nothing. And he was like, no, it's all clear, I'm just going to check and make sure. It's like, okay. So he was checking everywhere, and then as he said that, it was like, so Nick was here, like next to me, and his weight just fell. It was like, it's so weird to I can't explain it. He was sitting there next to me being so good and so supportive, but when the minute the guy said that, it was like his heart stopped, and he was just like, oh my God. And I think it finally hit him that I'd had a miscarriage. Because I think even up to going in that waiting room, we both of us had that little bit of, it still might be okay. And anyone will tell you that the minute you get those lines, those positive lines, or pregnant on a test, you don't just think about the pregnancy. You think about what the baby will look like, whether it's a boy or a girl, how your other children, if you have any other children, will play with the baby. I remember thinking, oh my God, Kian's going to be a nightmare. But Luca will be so happy. Luca really wanted another brother or sister, so I remember being really excited to tell them that they were going to have another brother or sister as well. And you just think of everything, and then just like that, it's taken away from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's really hard. So I had the scan, the guy said your womb's empty. He then checked my ovaries. I don't know why, I guess he was just doing an overall check, and he said that, yeah, your ovaries are fine. And I was like, okay. Okay, and he was like, right, so we'll give you a minute. And he was so professional. He cleared up, he left the room, gave me and Nick a minute to be alone. And I'm not the kind of person like, I conceal how I feel. So like if I'm sad, I'll try and keep it in. It always comes out. I always end up sobbing. But I guess I'm quite clever at masking it sometimes. And I said like, oh, okay, like, let's go. And Nick was really visibly upset, more than me. But I was all very much like, okay, what's next? Okay, what, okay, fine, it's happened, what's next? What can I do now? Like, that's just how my brain is. And then eventually it'll hit me and I'll get upset. So we left and we drove to my mum's house to get the kids. And then I think I saw my mum, and then I started crying. I started bawling in her kitchen. And she was giving me a cuddle. My mum was crying. Nick was really upset too. But the drive home from my mum's house was like the most quiet drive ever. Me and Nick were so silent. And then we got home. My bleeding, in a sense, I was quite lucky because I was able to self-manage it. So I was able to have the miscarriage at home. I didn't have to have any sort of medical interference or any... I didn't have to go and have anything done. I you know, my womb was clear, so everything had gone. But as much as everything goes and everything breaks up, you do see things. And I remember you'd get like, it's quite graphic. I mean, you'd have like clumps of like clots of bleeding, and they would be like the size of... I mean, this is like the only equivalent. This is my eyeliner pot. But that was probably one of the biggest size clumps that I had. It was probably about that big. And when you look at that, it's not that big. But when that's a lump of blood, it's big. So you'd have things like that. You'd have really... I mean, it's quite sad. Like when I go right back and think about it, I started having pains while I was actually at a friend's house. And I remember sitting there, and so this was like the 13th of something of January, and we were at her house for her birthday, and I started having cramps, but they felt like period pains. But I'd also had these pains with Kian and with Luca, and they're very hard to... It's very hard to spot pains that are normal in pregnancy and pains that aren't. So pains that are normal in pregnancy would be like a light period-like pain. They are your ligaments stretching, so they are your body getting used to being pregnant, your belly growing, all sorts of things. And back pain is where you get some back pain in early pregnancy. It's just where everything's shifting. And I had that at my friend's, and I remember thinking, oh, this is quite painful, do I need to go home? But then it stopped, it went away. So I thought, oh, it was just obviously that's fine. But it wasn't, because the next day is when my bleeding started. So I think that that was actually the start of my miscarriage. Time sort of went by. I had a brief amount of time off work. I thought that going back to work would be a really good focus point for me. At the time I was in quite a busy role, and I was responsible for people as well. So I wanted to get back into that, and I didn't want... You don't want people thinking you're weak. That's... I don't know, it's probably just me, but I get really... I guess I worry about what people think way too much, or way more than I should. But I didn't want people to think that I was weak and things. And I had a really amazing boss at the time, and he was so supportive. And was like, you know, are you sure you want to come back? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. He was like, just do what you want when you're ready. And he was really good. So I went back to work, carried on. Nick went back to work straight away because he works as a furniture maker, and there was a piece of furniture that needed doing really fast, and he was the only person who could work on that particular piece. So Nick just had no time to grieve, like, at all. Like, it was like it happened, he's straight back at work. I really don't know how he done it. I really don't. But he did. Like, you know, you need to make money at any house, you need to carry on. But I think he definitely struggled, because he'd call me all the time just to make sure I was okay. And at the time I worked from home, but also in the workplace on weekends. So while I was at home working, I found it harder because the minute I had dropped, so I dropped my oldest at school, I dropped my little one at preschool, and then I come back and I do my work. But the minute I was alone was so hard. I could not be by myself. I couldn't be in this house alone. Because when I was pregnant and I was in this house alone, all I would do for 2 weeks is think about how I'm pregnant, how I'm about to have another baby, what am I going to call it? You know, I was really, really, really excited, and I kept thinking like moving the room round, where would the cot go? And I was all of a sudden alone and not pregnant, like completely alone. Like when you're pregnant, you go to sleep, and every woman will do this, I'm telling you. Even if they find out they're pregnant and they're 5 weeks pregnant, every single woman will just have that moment, whether it be in bed and their partner's asleep next to them, or they're alone, or that sitting on a bus, or whatever they're doing, sitting in a park, whatever, they will have that small moment where they just put their hand on their tummy and they just think, I have a little person. I'm growing person. I love you so much. That's what you feel like. You feel like you love the, you know, this little baby that you're making. You feel like you're in love already, and to suddenly go to sleep empty was really hard. This is the part where I try not to cry, but it was. It's quite lonely. Try not to cry. But it's just, and a lot of my close friends aren't really at the place that they're at in their lives where I am. So not many of my friends are married or trying for kids yet. So my close female friends were there for me. But it's hard to understand unless you've been through it. It's so hard. And some people go through it and it doesn't affect them as badly. Like I've met a few women that have been through it and they're like, yeah, it happens, but it's nature's way and I've moved on. And that's great. Like that, if that's how they deal with their thing, that's fine. But that's not everybody. No two people are the same, and no two people are going to grieve the same. And I, for one, do not grieve like that at all. Like, I can't just move on. I can't just think it wasn't meant to be. Nature done the right thing. Like, to me, no. I was so angry and so upset, and I couldn't understand. I just couldn't understand, like, how has this happened again? And I think I was really upset because I was like, I knew it would happen. And I really didn't want to be right. Being alone, as I say, was the hardest part of it all. I would have panic attacks, and I've never had panic attacks in my life. So I went from being this bubbly, loud, confident person that I've always been. And I have my moments, I'm still human. I have moments when I'm sad and when I'm, you know, and things get difficult and I stress out. Me and Nick argue about the stupidest things, or the kids are stressing me out, and everything becomes on top of you, and that's normal, right? But this was something else. This was like the minute I was alone, I'd find myself trying to breathe properly and not have a panic attack. And I have normally been the person to try and look after someone who's in that state. I've always been the person to care for someone. And in this moment, when they would happen, I just didn't know who I was. And I remember I got a phone call. Because, like, you know, when you're pregnant, you can join, like, little competitions where you win, like, I don't know, win a free baby pack or whatever. And I kept getting emails that are like, oh, you're 12 weeks, oh, you're this. And that really bothered me. And I unsubscribed from them all in the end, but it took a while to get through. through to them all. And then I had a phone call from a lady who I won a competition, like a baby thing or something, and she was like, oh, you're expecting a bundle of joy in August. And I was like, oh, I'm not anymore, actually. And I never said it in a way that made her feel like shit, because what's that going to do? It's not her fault. She doesn't know that I've lost the baby. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, you were not to know, so it's fine, don't worry. She was like, okay. And then just got off the phone. And I had a panic attack straight after that. And that was within 10 minutes of me having to go and pick up my son from school. And I remember thinking, like, fuck, I need to sort myself out, because I can't go pick up my son from school looking like this. Like, I was a state, I had makeup everywhere, and, you know, you start shaking. So I had to really control myself to go and pick him up from school. And I managed to do it. I managed to carry on, but it was so hard. And after that, my periods were really irregular. I had lost the baby fully by the, like, you know, January, the end of January. So I bled for about 2 weeks. Mid to end of January, everything was done. Come February, I went to the doctors. They said, what's next? I said, okay, let's look into you. Just carry on trying and see how you go. Carried on. Didn't fall pregnant in February. March came, and I thought that was it. I thought I'd fallen pregnant again in March, and I didn't. I had 2 months with no period, and I was like, that's not right, that's not good. I called the doctors, and they arranged for me to have another scan to just see what's going on. I also had other symptoms, so I had things like weight gain, but I did say I'd had a miscarriage and I'd been eating really badly to comfort eat, so I expected weight gain. I just knew. So I'd had things like weight gain. My hair was also thinning out quite a bit. Like, my hair's always been quite thick, but it started really thinning out and getting quite bad, and I've actually got a patch of alopecia on the left side of my head. So like here, there was like a clear bald, like completely clear bald patch for like 2 years. It's just started growing really well, actually, but I had that, and I started thinking, like, maybe these are all linked, maybe there's something not quite right. My immune system's never been great as well, so like if I get cold or if I get sick, I'm normally really, really ill with it, like unnecessarily ill. And I'd get ill all the time when I was younger. So yeah, so I went to the doctors, went over the whole history of my periods, all the pain that I'd had, the heavy bleeding. Like, I'd had really heavy periods that were not good for you, because you lose too much blood and it can make you really ill. And so he sent me for the scan, and that's when I had the scan, and the woman, even the woman there, she was great, and she just went, you know, your ovaries do appear polycystic. So they did have the polycystic appearance, so think of like a grape, and it's like smooth like that. That's how an ovary should look, like a smooth grape. And mine was more like a pomegranate seeds, like really bumpy around the edge. And I could see it on scan. When she was doing the scan, I knew that there was something wrong. So then I found that out. So I've been this year grieving for the loss of my 9-week baby, and grieving for the fact that my body does not work like normal, like it should. But I'll do other videos on my PCOS. I'll do something else about that. But, you know, going through a miscarriage is so hard and very lonely. And I think about it every day. There's not a day that goes by where I don't think, like, I'm not pregnant. I mean, it's been a while now and I'm still not pregnant, and it can be quite exhausting. I get quite sad when I come on, and I don't want to tell Nick that I've come on my period. The doctors don't know if I'm ovulating at all at the moment, so I'm having some stuff done with that. I'm seeing a hormone doctor who's going to review that and find out if I actually am or not, so we'll find that out. But in terms of the miscarriage, I have to remember that I have been pregnant this year. That's what I have to remember, because normally for a normal healthy couple it can take up to 1 year of trying for a baby to conceive. And if you think about it, I have been pregnant in January, and we are on month 8. So ruling out January, so I was already pregnant then, we are looking at 6-7 months that I've only been trying, so I need to make sure that I remember that and not think of it as I've been trying since October, because I have been pregnant and that I need to remember that. So I'm hoping to get pregnant again at some point, but I'm also thinking that I will be terrified of it, and I don't think I would relax until I held the baby. Pregnancy is such a beautiful thing. It is. Your body's doing amazing things, but it can be the most scariest thing in the world as well, especially to someone who's had loss or knows someone who, or you know, it can be just a really scary time. But I was very lucky that I have my partner and my 2 boys and my family and friends that have been there for me. They've made me feel great. My husband especially has been there. Every single time I'm sad, like I can just start crying, he'll know. He'll make sure that I'm alright, he'll come over and give me a cuddle, and I've seen him cry a few times as well. It just hits you every now and then, especially this month. Obviously August we really struggled. We just had a little trip away to Bournemouth with the kids because I didn't want to be in the house. I was also due my period at the same time that I would have been due my baby, which is not great. For anyone who's had a miscarriage knows that every time you get your period and you see bleeding, it takes you straight back. So I wanted to be out of the house in case I came on as well. I wanted to be out of the house anyway. I wanted to take my kids away. I didn't want them to see me sad and wonder why. I mean, they've seen me. I mean, kids aren't stupid. They pick up on everything, and especially my oldest has seen me on and off sad, and I wanted him to have a nice little summer with us. So took them to Bournemouth and we had a lovely time. Kids played in the sand. We had good weather, so they got to go in the sea, and we ate loads of rubbish food, and it was really, really nice. We've come back and it's like it's hit me again now that it's actually this month. I probably would have had this month to the beginning of next month, I probably would have had a newborn in this house. Was supposed to have had a newborn in this house, but it is what it is, and I'm sorry this video is so long, but I told you it would be. But if you managed to make it through the video, thanks. I just need to break this taboo of talking about it. The minute you talk about it, people panic, and they shouldn't, because so many women go through it, and men. And that's another thing, you know, men are always treated the lesser of the halves because women go through the physical side. Imagine how helpless it must feel to see your partner, if it was reversed, go through that and bleed and have all these doctors around them and go through that, and you can't do anything about it. It must be really hard. It's not easy for any couple, for any mum, dad, or anyone really, and it affects the family too. My mum has seen me really upset, and it must be heartbreaking for her to see her daughter go through this. I hope that my children never go through this. I hope that no one I know goes through this, because it's not good. It's horrible. You don't get given a choice, it just gets happening, right? You get dealt with the cards of life and then you just play the game. So yeah, but the rest of the videos are going to be a bit more positive. My next video is tomorrow, and I'm actually going to be talking about a woman who has given me her story to tell. So I'll be doing my Friday story tomorrow, and then the next week one will be about causes and treatment and things and places to go. So I'll be doing a little bit on that, and then I'll be doing sort of step-by-steps on things with it. I'm also doing a friends and family towards the end. By the way, this is my 3rd day in doing my squats, and I can't walk. I'm sitting down on a chair right now, and I'm wondering how I'm going to get back up again, but we'll see. So really thanks for listening to me, and if you have any questions or anything like that, do pop them my way, because I'm going to be doing a question and answer thing on miscarriage, so it could be anything. And I'll try and find the answer, I guess. So yeah, Thanks very much, and I will see you again next week.